Chapter 3, the Iterian Mission of Hope. Captain Varkan stood at the helm of the Iterian starship, Nova Hope, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars that filled the view screen. His face, chiseled and stern, reflected the burden of responsibility he carried. As the captain of this crucial mission, he was tasked with finding a new world and a compatible species to blend their DNA with, ensuring the survival of their kind. Varkan's thoughts were interrupted by a voice from the communications console. "Captain, we're approaching the target system," said Lieutenant Zira, the ship's communications officer. Zira was a loyal and skilled officer, known for her keen intellect and calm demeanor. "Thank you, Lieutenant," Varkan replied. "Prepare for orbital insertion. I want all systems on high alert." The crew of the Nova Hope consisted of 500 elite Iterian warriors and scientists, each chosen for their exceptional skills and dedication to the mission. They had trained rigorously for this moment, knowing that the fate of their species depended on their success. The journey across the star system had not been without its challenges. Shortly after leaving Iteria, the Nova Hope encountered minor mechanical and software failures. At first, these issues seemed like the normal teething problems of a long-range space voyage. The propulsion system's coolant leaks, minor glitches in the navigation software, and sporadic communication breakdowns were quickly repaired by the highly skilled engineering team led by Chief Engineer Arka. But as the malfunctions continued, Varkan began to suspect a more sinister cause. The rival faction on Iteria, the Kaplans, had opposed their mission from the start. The Kaplans believed that further DNA modifications and the development of artificial reproduction methods, such as growing embryos in stasis chambers, were the answer to their species' survival. They had perfected this technology on their own continent but faced a serious problem. The children born this way appeared soulless and without emotion, a fate Varkan's faction was determined to avoid. The possibility of sabotage gnawed at Varkan's mind. Could the Kaplans have infiltrated their mission, planting agents or devices to ensure its failure? The implications were grave, but Varkan had no proof, only his suspicions. As the ship maneuvered into orbit around the blue and green planet below, Varkan turned to his first officer, Commander Thaler. Thaler was a seasoned veteran, his experience and wisdom invaluable to the mission. "Commander, initiate the planetary scans," Varkan ordered. Thaler nodded and began working at his console. "Scanning now, Captain. The planet appears to have a breathable atmosphere, abundant water sources, and diverse ecosystems. It looks promising." Varkan allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Prepare the landing teams. We need to find a suitable location to establish our base of operations." Just as the preparations were underway, the ship suddenly shuddered violently. Alarms blared throughout the bridge, and the lights flickered. "Report!" Varkan barked, gripping the edge of his command chair. "Captain, we've sustained damage to the propulsion system," said Chief Engineer Arka, his voice strained. "It looks like a critical failure in the main drive." "Can we stabilize the ship?" Varkan asked urgently. Arka shook his head. "I'm afraid not, Captain. We're losing altitude. We need to prepare for an emergency landing." Varkan's mind raced as he issued rapid-fire orders. "All hands, brace for impact. Secure all sensitive equipment and prepare for emergency protocols." "Commander Thaler, coordinate the landing teams. We need to make sure as many survive as possible." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, strapping into their seats and securing loose items. The ship descended rapidly, the friction of the atmosphere causing the hull to glow with intense heat. The view out the main window showed the landscape rushing up to meet them, a blur of green and brown. With a thunderous crash, Nova Hope slammed into the side of a mountain, tearing through trees and rocks before coming to a halt in a smoking, mangled heap. Inside, the crew was thrown violently despite their precautions. The ship groaned and creaked, settling into the jagged terrain. Varkan struggled to his feet, his vision swimming. "Status report," he demanded, his voice hoarse. Lieutenant Zira, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead, checked her console. "We've lost several compartments, Captain. Casualty reports are coming in. We've lost over 50 crew members." Varkan's heart sank. Each life lost was a blow to their already dwindling population. "Get the medical teams on it. We need to tend to the wounded and account for everyone. Commander Thaler, organize search and rescue parties." Thalor, his face grim, nodded and began coordinating efforts with the remaining crew. The ship was badly damaged, its once sleek and powerful form now a twisted wreck. Fires were being extinguished, and the injured were being carried to makeshift triage areas. As the crew worked tirelessly, Varkon took a moment to assess their surroundings. The mountains were rugged and imposing, with dense forests stretching out below. The air was crisp and fresh, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the ship. This planet, despite the harsh introduction, held promise. "Captain," called Dr. Lyra, the ship's chief medical officer, "we've stabilized most of the injured, but we've lost some of our medical supplies in the crash. We'll need to find local resources to replenish our stocks." Varkon nodded. "Understood, Doctor. We'll prioritize that once we've assessed our situation. How are the survivors holding up?" "Most are in shock, but they're resilient," Dr. Lyra replied. "They know what's at stake." Varkon looked around at his crew, their faces a mix of determination and exhaustion. They had trained for this, prepared for the worst, but seeing it unfold was another matter entirely. "Listen up, everyone," Varkon called out, his voice carrying authority and resolve. "We've suffered a setback, but we are Iterians. We adapt, we endure, and we overcome. Our mission is still the same. We will find a way to survive here, and we will find a species compatible with our DNA. Begin taking inventory, assess the damage, and start exploring our surroundings. We need to establish a secure perimeter and set up a base camp." The crew responded with a collective nod, their spirits lifted by Varkon's leadership. They set to work, salvaging what they could from the wreckage and organizing teams to explore the immediate area. Varkon joined one of the exploration teams, his keen eyes scanning the landscape. The forest was dense and teeming with life. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, and the underbrush rustled with unseen creatures. It was a wild, untamed world, but it held the potential they desperately needed. As they moved through the forest, Varkon couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and apprehension. They had journeyed across the stars, left their dying world behind, and now found themselves on the precipice of a new beginning. But this new world was not without its dangers. "Captain, over here," called Lieutenant Zira, pointing to a cluster of plants with vibrant, glowing flowers. "These might be useful for our medical supplies." Dr. Lyra examined the plants and nodded. "They have strong medicinal properties. We should gather as many as we can." Varkon watched as the team collected the plants, their spirits buoyed by this small victory. It was a reminder that, even in the direst circumstances, hope could be found. Back at the crash site, the crew had managed to set up a temporary base camp. Tents were erected, and the surviving equipment was organized. Fires crackled as the crew cooked food and warmed themselves against the evening chill. Varkon gathered his senior officers for a meeting. "We've made progress, but we're far from secure. We need to establish a more permanent base and continue exploring. Our priority is finding a compatible species and securing our survival." Commander Thalor nodded. "We'll need to expand our search radius. There's a river nearby that could provide fresh water, and we've seen signs of larger animals in the area." Lieutenant Zira added, "We should also set up communication relays to try and contact any other Iterian ships that might be in the sector. We need to let them know our status." Varkon agreed. "Do it. And remember, we are not alone on this planet. We need to be cautious and aware of any potential threats." The meeting adjourned, and the officers returned to their duties. Varkon took a moment to stand alone, staring up at the stars. Somewhere out there was their home, Iteria, a world they could never return to. But here, on this new planet, they had a chance to start anew. The night was quiet, the only sounds the crackling of the fires and the distant calls of unknown creatures. Varkon knew that their journey was far from over. They had faced unimaginable challenges to get here, and there would be more to come. But with each step forward, they moved closer to their goal. As the first light of dawn began to break over the mountains, Varkon felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had come to this world to find a future, and he was determined to lead his people to it. The Iterians would endure, they would adapt, and they would survive.